Again to all, and a blessed Sunday to all those who are on Zoom. Please join me in prayer. God of love, God of wisdom, creator of all our eyes could see and everything beyond our touch and sight, we bless your name today. Purify our hearts and guide our thoughts that we may be receptive of your word and be transformed by your Spirit. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Jesus and his disciples had a reporting time. The disciples gave Jesus an account of their activities and the teachings they imparted to people. Jesus, being aware of self-care and burnout, instructed his disciples to retreat to a deserted place so they might be able to rest for a while. Self-care is not recent. Jesus actually had that. As more and more people were drawn to them, people were chasing after them actually. They didn't have the leisure to even eat. They were so busy, just like pastors and. So Jesus and the disciples boarded an unnamed boat from the Norwegian cruise lines. But still the crowd kept on chasing them. The crowd recognized them from afar and they went ahead of them on the other side. As they were approaching the shore, Jesus saw the crowd and he had pity on them. He had compassion on them because they were just like sheep without a shepherd. Then Jesus taught the people about hospitality, humility, apology, forgiveness. Actually, the text just said Jesus taught them many things. It just dawned on me that Jesus could have taught them those things. I added those. Now, the day was getting late. The disciples began to panic. They felt obligated to feed the crowd. The problem, however, is where to get that much food. They were in a remote place, and besides, they didn't have the capacity, monetarily, to feed a crowd of 5,000. That's excluding women and children. The disciples were men, and so they only counted the men. If Mary Magdalene was present during the counting, she could have protested, but she was out of town at that time. I made that up. The disciples were good teachers, but they needed to retake their Statistics 101. The truth is that culturally, women and children during the time were secondary citizens. They were not fully human beings just like the men. Well, no more sarcasm. It's awful. The disciples were unified in the thinking that Jesus should dismiss the crowd and let them find food and take care of themselves. Problem solved. Well, the disciples failed to understand Jesus' compassion on the crowd. How easy it is for the less compassionate to be dismissive. That's just the truth. So Jesus, out of his compassion, insisted that the disciples should give the people something to eat and somehow look for resources within. Look for food within. Come on. Do your initiative right there. And yes, they found 5 loaves of panera bread and 2 tilapias from Seafood City fried and crispy. Then Jesus instructed his disciples to organize the people in groups of hundreds and fifties as he was about to officiate a Holy Communion, using the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. What else it could be? Verse 41 clearly stated, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves, gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and he divided the fish among them all. Yes, it was a Holy Communion. It was. Then the miracle happened. The miracle happened. Everyone ate and was filled. In the end, the disciples were able to gather 12 baskets of leftovers. 12 baskets full of leftovers. Whoo! Someone said, for those who don't believe in divine mystery, the feeding of the 5,000 is simply a mythical story. The skeptics remain unconvinced. The cynical questions the veracity of the author or the passage. But those who believe in miracles, they're simply saying, why not? Nothing is impossible with God, right? Now you decide for yourself how you take the story. The big question is, what can we make out of this passage? What can we make out of this story? Well, by the way, all 4 Gospels have this story in common. In fact, there is also a story of the feeding of the 4,000, but only by Matthew and Mark. John and Luke didn't have those story. But I like John's version of the story because it mentions that Andrew, one of the disciples, found a boy who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And the lad gave them up. He gave up his baon, from our Filipino dialect, or packed dinner. For the sake of the 5,013 men, including Jesus and his disciples, even if the boy was not counted among the 5,000 plus men, he shared what he got. He gave up his dinner, and God multiplied it. You may take it literally, you may take it allegorically. You decide. Here's what I believe. Every time someone shares something, a miracle happens. When someone gives up something for the sake of others, that's even a bigger miracle. When someone gives up something for God's use, God multiplies what has been given and a greater miracle happens. Wow. Well, when a selfish, egocentric person gives, that's a miracle. Because normally, when you only think of yourself, why should I give up something? Right? But when you turn the other way, that's a miracle. When someone is transformed from simply giving to become generous, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. Miracle, after all, is tangible. Miracle isn't simply like in magic, In fact, as we wake up in the morning and realize we are still alive, that's a miracle in itself. Have you realized that? Oh, what a big miracle. Though my back is still aching, my knees are trembling, it's still a miracle. I am alive. Right? Woo! Well, there is a need for us to count the miracles that happen and continue to happen in our personal lives. I will invite you to do that. In a world where one measure of success is how wealth one has accumulated, how much wealth one has accumulated, sharing is a miracle. In a world where greatness is associated with material success, generosity is a miracle. I like what Dale puts after his name in every email he sends, and it goes, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. I just love that. I just love that. In a world where you can be anything, you have all the possibilities, just be kind. Oh, that's so beautiful. In a world where rude and arrogant people are in power and in control, kindness is a miracle. Amen. Let us be mindful that Jesus started with compassion. Compassion for the people, compassion for the crowd. Then the miracle of multiplication took place. But before it happened, a little boy in his innocence did his share of giving up what he had. Amen. Does that ring a bell? That somehow we have to do something like the boy? You know? The disciples, who themselves did not expect or believe something big would come out of that 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, couldn't say anything. This was a humbling moment for them. This was a faith moment for them. This was a God moment for them. Oh, something big just happened. What if? What if we not just count our blessings? What if we now count the miracles out of the blessings we share? How does that sound? Sound probably even better, right? What if we stop accumulating and hoarding and start sharing? That will be a miracle you and I can actually make or perform. We don't need to do magic, right? What if our church will faithfully focus on what we can do and share instead of worrying we just don't have enough? What if we allow God to use us as instruments of God's compassionate works in the world and simply believe that God's provision will just come? We don't need to answer these questions. We don't need to answer these questions. We just have to make them happen. If you agree with me, say amen. Amen. Blessings to you.
Are we singing?
Yes, please rise for the closing song.
No,
we're not doing a closing song.
Oh.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, and so that the reflection and the meditation will, get into our system, and we kind of embrace it. We'll skip the singing of the parting song because we have work to do. And so I would like to offer this benediction to all of you. Sisters and brothers,